my name is Rachel. I'm 15 years old. I go to Inquiry Hub Secondary School. And for today, my book is The Frog Who Wanted to Sing, which is a children's book that I wrote and illustrated. It's about this frog who goes through this journey of really having this passion of singing, but doesn't know how to express himself in the right way. And although a lot of people doubted him, he always believed in himself. And in the end, he finally found the way to his dreams. Gus has been through a lot. He's been singing to a bunch of different people. He's been trying his best. And over time, people are saying, no, you can't do it. Like, you're not good at singing. Like, you should stop. Like, give up on this because you're not ever going to achieve anything. And he doesn't know what to do. He's at a bit of a loss. He still believes in himself, but he's kind of on the process of giving up because he doesn't know what to do. And so he goes for a walk and he's like, what should I do? And so, yeah, this is as he's going for the walk. Gus took a rest on a bench, still singing quietly. He was ready to give up. Next to him was an old lady goose. To Gus's surprise, when she heard him singing, she did not laugh or walk away. Instead, she listened carefully. Once Gus had finished his song, the old lady goose spoke. Young frog, we have been looking for someone who sings like you. You have? Asked Gus, but I can't sing. Of course you can, said the lady goose. Your croaking is exactly what we need for our recital. The goose took Gus down to the street, to a small building in the middle of the city. Gus practiced and practiced and practiced. He learned how to sing very high and very low. Soon the big day came. Gus invited all his friends and family. He got dressed in a fancy suit. He walked onto the big stage, opened his mouth, and croak.
Hello, my name is Oliver Allen, and I'm glad to be a part of the White Pines collection at Port Moody Library. Thank you so much for having me. The books that I have a graphic novel called Futuristic Gypsy, written by myself and my illustrator, Natalia Nova. And I also have 896 page poetry anthology called Medusa and the Playboy, um, collection of poems that I've written over the last 20 years or so. And I'm quite proud of both. This is called The Becoming. As a cocoon, spindling in branches deep, in a forest rich with earl burny density, in timber leaves fluorescent in sunlit radiance, I spin and shed and spin and shed, the layers of which made me a comfortable worm within a cocoon of skin. A pouch glistening with spindles, a mindful ball of transformation, becoming something so much more. Every layer I shed brings a new life beyond what was meant to be right. And as I become the becoming one, the becoming thing of wonder, the becoming thing of beauty metamorphosed, in a calm tranquility, shedding skin and layers of anxiety, shedding skin and layers of unsobriety, shedding skin and layers of society. I am turning into something much more than just a gray moth on the empty floor. With each line I write and explain my life, I realize that within me is a mindful person who feels the transformation, the becoming of a little old worm into a beautiful butterfly, a treasured butterfly, a treasured butterfly, with colors so bright, red, yellow, green, black, and white.
My name is Justina Mark. I am a parent, a mother, a parent, living in Coquitlam, where I'm raising my family. This is a wonderful community that we live in. My role at Asian Impact Society, I'm the treasurer, but being such a small not-for-profit organization, all of us who are part of this organization wear many, many hats. The history or the genesis of Asian Impact Society, well, it was formed during the pandemic when we saw a rise in anti-Asian sentiment and crime in our very own community. And in fact, a couple of our founding members were in fact victims of a microaggression incident at Lafarge Lake. So parents we came together and thought, you know what, we need to take this opportunity to form an organization where we can make an impact and educate people about how wrong it is to discriminate.
My name is Tiffany Duff. I'm also a mom, live and raise my family and children's and dogs and cats in Coquitlam. When we formed the Asian Impact Society, it's really storytelling and using education and arts to bring our community together.
Mina's Lunch is a true story submitted by Stephanie Ashia. Stephanie Ashia is Canadian, and she really did grow up in Chemainus, a community on the island, Vancouver Island, with her mom, her dad, and her sister. So Stephanie is the real life Mina, and this is her story about her childhood experience at school when she was growing up. Mina's Lunch, a story about food, culture, and belonging. My name is Mina, and I live in a small town on Vancouver Island called Chemainus. Have you been there? There are world famous murals painted on buildings all around town. You can even follow yellow footprints painted on the sidewalk, and it'll take you on a tour to see them all. There are not many Chinese families that live here in Chemainus because it is a small town. My mom, dad, and sister, and I are one of the few Chinese families that live here. There are other families that have lived here for many generations. Everyone is very friendly, and we always say hello to people we know in town. My best friend lives down the block. I love living in a small town. One day at school, I was eating my lunch, and my friend suddenly said, "Ew, that smells." I didn't know what she was talking about and looked all around me, but I couldn't find anything that smelled bad. Then I saw her pointing to my lunch. So I sniffed my favorite lunch, pork and shrimp dumplings. It smelled delicious to me, and I told her so. I didn't know why she thought it smelled bad.
Hi, my name is Mika Ascari. I am the author and writer of The Enchanted Tale of the Haunted Mansion. I'm 11 years old now. I was 9 when the book was published. And yeah, I've really been proud of what I've become, and I'm just super excited to be here and just share some things that I've done with you. The book is about 3 young girls who are in middle school: Violet, Summer, and Addison. The funny thing about this is that they were just on a casual walk, a stroll, I would say, in the forest or somewhere. They were just going on a hike after a long day of school. And it was like about to be late at night. It was like 6. It was in the winter, so it was getting dark really fast. And so yeah, the girls were just on a walk, and all of a sudden, one of them, I think it was Summer or Violet, I'm not sure, they brought up the fact, "Oh, do you guys remember that there was an old man who died in a house close to here?" And they were like, "Yeah, the story was like spread all around the town. It was a pretty insane story." And so yeah, they started talking about it, and then they actually spotted the mansion, and they decided to go inside. It was a beautiful sunshiny day on Vancouver Island. Addison was taking a walk in the Forbidden Forest with her 2 best friends, Violet and Summer. Long ago, there was an old legend that the Forbidden Forest might be haunted. The girls didn't care and went on with their walk with not a single worry. "Hey girls, did you know the story about an old man who lived in a mansion in the Forbidden Forest?" Addison asked. Oh, yeah, he didn't know that his mansion was haunted until one day a ghost kidnapped him, yada, yada, yada. And the mansion was never seen again, Summer said. Yeah, but do you guys believe it? Violet asked. Nah, the girl said. Then all of a sudden they ran into an old red sign that said, right this way, with an arrow pointing deeper into the dark forest. Isn't that weird that there's a random sign that says right this way, or is it just me? Summer started to suspect something odd about the sign, then turned around to look at the sign. It was gone. Guys, the sign is gone, Summer yelled in horror. Addison and Violet turned around and saw Summer pointing to the blank spot where the sign was. Wait, where did it go? Addison said. I don't know. Right after Violet asked about the sign and we started going the directions it told us to, I thought I wanted to see more writing on it. I turned around and it was gone, Summer said.
Hi, my name is Colette Boss, and I wrote my first book in my Bon Echo climate science fiction series. And the title of the book is Bon Echo and the Competition. This first volume, introduces the teenage heroine. Her name is Maven. And the story starts with her rereading her diary atop a lighthouse in a lantern room, which is basically where her fellowship group meets. Anyway, she's rereading her diary, recounting her last year of high school adventures. And she describes how she forms her fellowship in the great fight against global warming. Log, last entry for this journal at Bon Echo Bay Lighthouse. Wow, I just did my 108 steps to the observation deck just now and beat my last record by 8 seconds. This lighthouse is so going to keep us in shape. I'm not sure, though, if everyone is on board with this idea, but we shall see. I can't believe that just one day after high school graduation, here I am, preparing to write my last thoughts in my very first journal given to me by my grandmother for my birthday just 3 months ago. Crazy. Anyway, if I need any kind of inspiration for my writing, there can be no better place than my Bon Echo Lighthouse, because this is where it all started. So much has happened in the last semester of high school that it feels more like 10 years have gone by than just a couple of months. I'm just starting to come down from the fantastic day we had yesterday celebrating our high school graduation. And now I'm looking forward to this summer because we've got some exciting things lined up for the next couple of months. After that, which I still can't believe I could accomplish, everything is now set up to attend university this coming September. I can't remember being this excited about the future because all of this is such a 180 from high school. Right now, though, it's just me up here, and all I want to do is relax and take in the view.
Oh, hi there, everyone. My name's Bob Cowan, and I'm the author of a book that has appeared in the White Pine collection, I guess just in the last few months. My mountain biking neighbors, conversations with otherwise normal people. The woman who appears on the cover will tell a little bit about her story. She's actually a local girl, and if any viewers happen to recognize her, they realize that I've changed her name, but everything else is pretty much true. And I had asked her how it was that she came to get into the sport at about age 30. And it turned out it had a lot to do with her partner, Miles, who'd been a mountain biker, since he was about 12 years old, and he sort of urged her to try it. So where we pick up, she's explaining how it was that she started biking. Maureen placed her left elbow on the patio table and rested her cheek in her hand. While I waited, I could see the wheels turning in her head. Finally, she said, "Here's something that's interesting about my initial learning. Miles is going to hate me for saying this, but it might be good for your story. It's the dynamic between the two of us when we started biking together." Miles was so excited to share everything with me that he overcoached at the beginning. It was a deluge of tips and information and critiques. It worked really well for all the wrong reasons. I'd get so frustrated and fed up with him that I would just take off, going really fast so that I didn't have to listen to him. I'd motor down the hill and have my best runs. I'd do so very well. "Just because you were trying to escape his coaching?" I echoed. "Yes, I was so annoyed that I'd fly down and have the greatest runs ever." "Since those early days," she reassured me, "we found a nice equilibrium. He gives me just a few pointers each time. They're really helpful and useful for the most part. But reaching this happy state was painful. Poor Miles. He'd say something well-intentioned, and I'd get so ticked off. His buddy would then say the exact same thing to me, and I'd think, "Oh, wow, that's so insightful."
My name is Bari Imam. I, as a child, grew up in Afghanistan many decades ago. And since essentially the war started there in 1979 was when we were there. And we endured that for about 10 years as a kid. Then obviously my parents decided to leave. So that was 33 years ago. And then fast forward, we went through a lot of different experiences, and we ended up immigrating to Canada. And what I thought would be good for me after living in Canada for over 3 decades is to tell my story. And I realized that my story as a child, plus all the immigrant stuff we went through, and interestingly enough, I chose a career as a police officer in Canada. So I did that for 20 years. I picked up a lot of interesting things from there, which I felt were very unique. And I feel like that's just me as a person. I also find myself a unique individual within the policing community. They were, especially when I started, which is about 25 years ago or more than that now, there were very few people who were of my background and had my experience who were working as police officers. So at the end of the day, when I finished my career as a police officer, I realized that there were so many lessons, so many parallels that I could draw when it comes to human struggle. And on top of that, I felt like there were a lot of parallels we could draw in terms of human connection. And one of my biggest reasons for publishing this book, well, first writing it and then publishing it, was to make sure that we as individuals who are unique and have a different story to tell, it's important that we share those stories with others. Because in my work, all those years as a police officer, and now that I work as a clinical counselor, I feel like this fear of the unknown and fear of the other, and is all stemming from our inability, or I shouldn't even say inability, from our lack of understanding of other humans, other cultures. It's just the othering of people is what causes a lot of conflict. So what I've highlighted in my book is I've tried to explain a lot of that. However, at the end of the day, focus on the human connection. And I try to do that by relating stories. So in terms of my story as a kid and how different things were for me, yet when I came to Canada, and for the last 34 years now, 33 years, I've seen more commonalities with everyone from all walks of life than I have seen differences. And that's what has given me hope that there's so much for us to share. And I wanted to share that with everyone.
Hello, my name is Margaret Franz. I am the author of a biography memoir entitled Between Blade and Bullet, the Mary Steinhauser Story. Mary Steinhauser was my sister, and this is her story, which I'm going to talk with you about today. I happened to be born into a family with an older sister, and it actually was my conviction that my sister Mary was the bravest and the most formidable force for good that I have ever known. And the spark that ignited my beliefs in her and her character was an episode that happened in the summer of 1957 when Mary was 15 and I was 12. On this particular day, Mary saved my friend Amy from a watery grave in the floodwaters of the Arrow Lakes River in the West Kootenay areas in British Columbia. And her bravery that day was burned into my consciousness, and it remained there, demanding to be brought forward back to life once again through my words as I wrote them some 64 years later.
Do you remember on the 9th of June when it came on radio? Maybe you saw the headline, maybe you still don't know. It said, 3 cons have taken 15 hostages, they're holding them down with a knife. 3 men are betting on freedom, betting the rest of their life. Do you remember a woman named Mary? She was held on the edge of a blade. She never died from no knife at her throat. She died for the friends she made. Because a man, a woman in chains, they got to fight.
Hi, my name is Harmony Gary, and I'm a multi-talented artist and author based in Port-Moody since 3 years now. Since 2017, I have owned my own art and poetry company called Le Rente Vivant. We can translate it by Make It Alive, but I don't know, it sounds better in French. My artistic endeavors span across various mediums, including theater, visual art, writing, and creative education workshops. I draw inspiration from the encounters between people and material, and I enjoy experimenting with color, rhythm to bring small things alive. Last year, I was very lucky to have my book, The Little Princess Who Didn't Like Dresses, in the White Pine collection. It's a bilingual flip book that tells the story of a princess who embraces her freedom to dress as she pleases. Through this tale, I promote the importance of individuality and self-expression, encouraging children to embrace their unique identities and pursue their passion. The Little Princess Who Didn't Like Dresses. Once upon a time, every so often, to be quite frank, every day, many times a day in a great big kingdom, there once lived a princess who simply hated wearing dresses. From the east corner to the west, from the north to the south, Mommy Queen and Daddy King brought in a plethora of dresses, in all of the colors and a good deal of shades. But this princess was a little princess who much preferred, and you'll see the rest when you read the book.
Hello, I am George B. Hatton, and I am the author of The Kringle Snatcher. I came up with the idea of the Kringle Snatcher for a school assignment a long time ago. I wrote making fictional countries, and I made The Kringle Snatcher. I really just loved the character so much that I decided to write kind of like a little 1 or 2 page short story, and then just kept adding on, and eventually I wrote the entire book. I've always kind of been drawn to writing ever since I was very little. It also helped that all my English teachers in school encouraged me uh, to keep going. I really love world building and all that, and I love seeing it come to fruition, an entire world. My favorite character is probably Fralos is the second in command, the Kringle Snatchers there, and yeah, he's just always kind of been my favorite. There are currently planned 2 more sequels for the trilogy, and probably much more to come in the future.
My name is Karen and Karen Hine, and I am a poet. And right now I have 3 books currently in the library with another one forthcoming, the 4th book. Haha. First book I have in there is called Inspired Musings. The second one I have in there is Bits, Snippets, and Other Works. And the third one I have is called Still Ripples. So the one you're watching for is this one. This one will be out soon, Splashes of Thought. With the publishing of my first 2 books, my third book also, I was invited into an entrepreneur program. And I thought to myself, what is one way I can combine poetry and a business, right? So I started up a little poetry company called the Troop de Poetry, and we travel all over the Tri-Cities area, doing little shows and stuff. Caterpillar. A furry black and brown caterpillar marches bravely up the branch, stopping at an offshoot. On the left, he spies a big, delicious green leaf. Hungrily, he moves his scissor-like mandibles and tries to take a bite. A gust of wind. The leaf falls, fluttering. Patiently, he continues up the tree. The empty town. As I enter the town, it is empty. The shop windows and doors listen to my footprints as I walk down the street. They are the only things to hear me and my silent wanderings. Once in a while, a tumbleweed breezes its way past me. It hears while it is there, then it leaves me, deserting me, leaving me with the silent town once again. Although it isn't silent, the wind is there, meandering its way here and there on its wily way, hearing but not listening, passing through and passing on to others who are wandering an empty town just like me. I wonder why it is silent and empty, and why none of the doors and windows open to let me in. Then I exit the town, never to return again, to walk, wander, and wonder. Song to a Tomato. Oh, yucky tomato, you evil thing. Your taste is foul and acidic as well. You are put in every dish, much against my wish. You're as round as an orange and red as blood. You are squishy as jelly, not good for my belly. You are part nightshade, made of poison for sure. In Shakespeare's time, rotten ones would fill the air for bad actors and fair. Distasteful thing, it's a mystery how you can be eaten at all. Stay away, oh tomato, haunt me no more, and quit making my tummy so sore.
Hi, my name is Kat Hendricks and I am the author and photographer of the book Rescue Tales. This was a passion project of mine and I created it in order to celebrate rescue dogs, inspire adoption while raising funds for rescue organizations. And this is my inspiration and rescue dog, Maggie. Hey, Maggie. In the pandemic, it was difficult times for everyone. But and we didn't have a dog for a short period, which was even harder on me. But what I noticed was, when you go on dog walks, people would talk to you and share their stories, and especially the rescue stories that really got me. And then after a long search, we found a new rescue dog, which is very difficult in the pandemic because they couldn't fly in, and it was very difficult to find a dog. And it just happened to be, we just happened to get her on Christmas Day, which was very special too, because it was going to be like, that was Christmas Day in lockdown. So this was like completely turned it around. And Maggie is our new dog, and she is just another amazing pup. And I just couldn't believe it. I was just like so overwhelmed with just having two now amazing rescue dogs. So this isn't the usual rescue story. Mina was a street dog in the Philippines, as a lot of them are. But Mina, so Dawn was on vacation in the Philippines, and this street dog just started following her around. So she's like, it's heartbreaking, right? So see this dog following you around. And she was on a boat leaving the islands, and Mina started swimming after the boat, right? So she was like, okay, I can't. That's it. I have to bring this dog back with me to Canada, right? To give it a chance. So she did. She spent ages finding organizations that could help her own personal savings, and she brought Mina back to Canada, which is just an amazing story in itself. But even more amazing was that this poor pup really, really needed her help. She actually, when her first vet visit, they found out that she had cancer. So Dawn didn't hesitate, got treatment, and Mina is now a cancer survivor. Really happy dog, very, very sweet, and hangs out in Dawn's yoga studio a lot.
I'm Christine Henry, and I'm the author of my first book in a series, Bert the Airport Cat. And here it is here. Now, Bert is a black cat, and he's on his way with his family to go on a trip. But something happens at the airport, and he doesn't end up on the plane. He's stranded, and he doesn't know where his family is. He doesn't know the concept of lost. He just knows that his family's not around and he's in a strange place. But he's a brave bowcat, and he just takes advantage of the situation and decides to have a little adventure and explores the airport. I purposely chose a black cat because black cats are often misunderstood because of their color. They're the last to be adopted and more likely to be euthanized. So, and I wanted to portray a black cat because they have such amazing personalities. They really are brave and fearless, and they have a habit of wandering. The color of Bert is really important in the story because it's about kindness and friendship, and also inclusion. Bert and his family are going on an adventure, flying from Vancouver, Canada to the UK, a place called Hampshire. Bert is nervous, and rightly so, you know. Having never flown on a plane, he's reluctant to go. Flying is for the birds, he thinks, but he trusts his family, so he won't complain. Bert watches frightened animals, luggage, and boxes on display, piled inside an enormous plane and in complete disarray. Bert cannot understand this, but what can he say? Everything seems so confusing and the animals are afraid. This is just not another day. Suddenly, a big bump and a bigger stumble. Crate and all, Bert takes a tumble. The crate opens and Bert runs for his life. He leaps out of the prison into the light. What a fright.
We are the Coquitlam Writers Group. This group was founded in 2016, about 7 years ago. We started very small. Some of the founding members are represented here tonight. We grew as a small group meeting every Wednesday night at the Waves Coffee Shop in Coquitlam. About 10 of us would meet, and over the years, we've met regularly every Wednesday night without fail for 7 years, I'm proud to say. And the group has grown from groups of meeting every night from 5 or 6 to 12 to 13 to 2 groups meeting on Wednesday nights. And now we have 3 groups meeting every week. And the result of these regular meetings has produced a lot of work.
Food, it does more than nourish us, it defines culture. It's part of our celebrations. Food is a factor in our wars, it heals us and it harms us too. And I think that very sort of succinct outline of what the theme was about, you can really sort of track it through to the sort of variety of the stories that the group have submitted and that we're going to share with you today.
My name is Ted Yabut Jr. The title of my story, my short story, is Life is a Feast. And I shall just read you a short excerpt. One of the main characters is Belen. This takes place in the Philippines. Belen is a nurse, but she is suffering from caring too much. And in this scene, let me just read. One morning, Belen felt a pain in her gut and a sudden drop in energy. She didn't want to go to PGH, the hospital. She knew the reasons, but never revealed them to Peping, her husband. This time, however, she called Peping to her bedside. She said, I don't know how long I can take this. Whenever patients sit down in my office, I can see the dread on their faces. The woman yesterday, she's 60, and she can't look me in the eye. I tell her she has cancer, and she will need immediate treatment. We can help with the surgery cost, but the drugs will be expensive. And I'm the one who can't look at her. I'm familiar with the agony and shock in people's faces, but the worst is the sadness. I knew what she would say. Her body is in pain, the cancer is killing her, and yet she cries, please don't tell my husband and children. I don't want to be a burden. She wants to go home. She prefers to die rather than force her family to borrow money. Can't you see this is so wrong? I begged her to reconsider, but she thanked me and walked out the door. I have sentenced her to death.
I'm Miriam Hebron. I'm very thankful to Ted and Jamie for starting the writers group and for Kate for inspiring us. And my story is called Glutton, with the food theme. And actually, the short story inspired me to write my novella, Celeste of the Seven Deadly Sins. So the story is about gluttony. I shifted uneasily as I listened to the message about the sin of gluttony, well aware of the excess flesh that bulged over the elastic waistline of my capris. Muffin top, they call it. Mine was not a mini muffin. It was women's Bible study, and that morning, 30 of us sat at tables in the basement of the Seaside Community Chapel in White Rock as a pastor of women spoke. Gluttony comes from a French word that means to gulp down. She flipped her silky dark hair over her shoulder. She rivaled a Barbie doll, though her petite body was less gangly and perfectly tanned, no matter what the season. She wore skinny jeans, tasseled booties, and a flesh-colored sleeveless top snug enough to reveal her ample endowment and low enough to offer a promised peek to any male nearby. She was one of the beautiful people, that select group who experience life differently from the rest of us.
My story is called The Secret is in the Sauce, as a story of love and betrayal and revenge that happened in a small Italian town. Chiara gathered what she needed to start cooking: onions, garlic, parsley, green peppers, and spices. She peeled onions with no hurry, layer by layer. As the tears flowed down her face, she thought of Nonna Julia. When you are sad, Bella, it's a good idea to cook. You can cry all you want while you peel onions. Cooking relaxed Chiara. The aroma of fresh herbs and ripe tomatoes from her grandmother's orchard brought her memories of happier times. Every Sunday, her family had dinner at her mother's place. This time it was a special occasion, her mother's 70th birthday. I hope Gino is in a better mood tonight. Lately, he's been acting so odd. Chiara added fresh oregano and parsley to the sauce. Stir it in gently, closed her eyes, and tasted. The flavor dissolved in her mouth, and she smiled. This tasted heavenly, Nonna Julia. You are right. The secret is in the sauce.
I'm Janice Hodge, and I'm so grateful that I'm a member of this group. They have been a lifesaver for me in more ways than one. My story is an adventure story about a teenage boy in the jungles of South America, long time ago, not today. And our chief of a pygmy tribe in the South American jungle was dead. The silence enshrouded the village, except for the constant wailing from within one of the mud huts, where Barar's widow and some other women were mourning the death of the wise and respected chief. Call, Barar, sat alone in a small dark hut in a far corner of the village. Here he would stay for 2 days, fasting and meditating before going into the jungle. His only provisions would be a gourd of water and a knife. He had to bring proof of his worthiness to take his father's position. Call had a limited length of time in which to carry out his task for the elders to recognize him as chief. The high priest would decide the number of days. The boy sat in the dark and meditated on what they expected of him. His father had been a great chief. It was Barar who had led the tribe to this place and made it a permanent settlement. With access to water, an abundance of animals to hunt, and arable ground, he convinced the others to give up their semi-nomadic lives and create homes.
My name is James Patrick Carey, and this short story is the very first one that I got published. It is called Delicious. And Melanie, the editor, and I went back and forth about it because I insisted a short story could really be short, and she had a minimum word count of 3,000 words. I came in at 3,001. The title of the story is Delicious, and it's a low fantasy story about 3 starving soldiers scrounging for food when they see a raven. And they decide to hunt it because they're desperate, and then they discover the raven can speak a single word: delicious.
My name's Kate Thorpe. My story is called Bread of Heaven. It's set in a Welsh mining village, a very close-knit community in 1913. Each Wednesday, the Jones boys would have an early cold supper to be ready to leave at the stroke of 6. Owen, the choirmaster, started the practice at 6:30 sharp. Bronwyn would leave to eat supper at her sister's. Wednesday was her favourite day of the week, as she didn't have to cook a hot meal. And besides, Gladys had married a baker, so there was always a tasty savoury on their table. Her brother-in-law Glenn was the only man in her extended family who didn't work down the pit. Gladys and Glenn ate their main meal at lunchtime so that they could go to bed directly after supper. Their life was dictated by the need to prove the yeast for their daily bread.
My name is Jack Emberley, and my story is called The Man Who Loved Cheese. It's inspired by a real event. One day I met a retired postal worker, an Englishman, a very sophisticated looking fellow, who was recruited at a fast food restaurant by a young man who wanted him to carry pot across the Canadian border for some extra change. He jumped at the idea, and it worked out quite well for him because he could do some things across the border as well and make some extra money. But one day things went afoul and he was caught and charged. He appeared before a judge who told him he had to reappear 6 months later. They were kind of busy. Would he come back, please, 6 months from now? He was a very honorable fellow, and so he did go back to the border and was denied access by the guard, who said he had committed a felony and he could not go across the border.
Hi, I'm Zhang Hui. I'm the author of the Canadian Immigration Handbook and also the author of the short story Watermelons in the Coquitlam Writers Group's anthology Feast. I was motivated firstly to enhance my self-knowledge and secondly to try to develop a tool to help people with immigration needs to protect themselves from immigration fraud, and thirdly, then is best wishes for my students. With a bite of watermelon sloshing in her mouth, Audrey thrust her finger at the television and exclaimed, "Aha! I knew it would be reported. That was quite a show." Then she clicked her tongue. "What a pity, you missed it." Henpig mumbled, "Uh-huh," he gnawed the watermelons so vigorously. She dribbled. The tragic news was brief. A Jubilee commercial for some sort of a healthcare product had already taken its place. "Nobody is fighting you over the watermelon, old man," Audrey rolled her eyes, snatched up a napkin, snapped Henpig's arm, and tucked the napkin into his hand. "Did you hear me?" Henpig gulped down a mouthful of watermelon, almost choking. He rubbed his chest and let out a loud burp before he could speak. "Right, I remember last night you were waiting for the news report of this. So you were there in the mess, watching her finish the ground?" His eyes protruded. "I've told you, of course I was. It should have come out last night." This provided Audrey with a perfect opportunity to elaborate on the accident, which pleased her no end.
My name is Mateo Uzzolino, and I really like soccer. And it really inspired me to write this book, Dear Soccer. I love playing the ukulele and playing with friends. I also like running outside around the track and field, doing anything pretty much. During COVID, a lot of people were missing like sports and they were just staying home in front of screens, and like that's really unhealthy, like being home and not outside. You don't even need to like do any like sports. You could just like go on a 30-minute walk or just play outside with anyone or kick a ball or just like do anything really. Dear Soccer, thank you for being my good friend. I was so happy when I first met you. I remember playing you with my family when I was small. You brought my family closer together. We played in my house. We played on the street. We played anywhere you could kick a ball. I remember how fun it was when our family got together and cheered for our favorite teams. Thank you for soccer for letting me be part of a team. I remember I was so happy playing on my first team and wearing my first jersey. When I was older, I played against teams and with players from different parts of the world.
Hi, I'm Yue. Actually, my pen name for my book, Namaste Olik, is Rinka Kriya. This is actually the abbreviation of my family member, my husband Riti, and my name Yue, and then Nina and Kenzo. And actually, last letter is from my first furry son, Astro. So that created my name. And then Kriya is actually a Sanskrit word. It means clarity or pureness. This book is about the little pup that lives in an animal forest who is having a challenging time to fall asleep, which many of our children do. As you know, all the parents probably can relate to it. And then one night he could not fall asleep, so he actually goes out to see all his forest friends. And yeah, he has Mrs. Snake, Mr. Bobcat, and Brother Flamingo, Granny Turtle. I intentionally put all these names with like some surnames like Granny, Brother, Flamingos, and also like with EDI purposes as well, like inclusivity, diversity as well. I wanted to have that community feeling that Port Moody carries. It has such a diverse feeling as well as the family closeness feeling that the community offers. So I really wanted to include that atmosphere that Port Moody carries in my book. The value of the book that I wanted to carry was that all the children in this world can hold the peace at all times in their heart. So in the end, I put the Sanskrit letters in here. I will read this out since it's not really a common thing, but I actually grew up in a Buddhist temple, back in Japan, and that's how I actually remember all these chants that my Buddhist priest grandfather has taught me, and that's also my inspiration to put some Buddhist philosophies in this book. Peace to all the children around the world. Om Avira Hunkan Vajradatuban. Om Avira Hunkan Vajradatuban.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juliana Negreiros. I'm a registered psychologist, and I have a private practice in Port Moody. I am the author of, or the co-author of Getting Comfortable with Uncertainty for Teens. And this is a self-help book that me and my co-author wrote for teens who are struggling with the many uncertainties of life, especially as a teenager. The title of the book, as you can see, says there is different tips. So 10 tips to overcome anxiety, stress, and fear that can come from uncertainty. And we try to keep the tips, as I said, engaging and hands-on. So as you start with tip number 1, is more education is called becoming aware of uncertainty. So knowing what it is, where it comes from why we all dislike uncertainty. And then at the end of the first tip, there is a quiz to see where on the uncertainty spectrum you fall. In terms of some people really need certainty and others not so much. So according to your life, especially of a teenager, how much certainty do you need on a daily basis? And then you will take the same quiz at the end of the book to see if your tolerance for uncertainty improved. And then there are a few more kind of hands-on in terms of facing your uncertainty and actually putting yourself in uncertain situations and seeing what happens, because often our brains tend to overthink and imagine the worst case scenario. But often if you go and you try to do the thing that was challenging, is not as bad as you think. So if you face it and see what happens, and you take what we call grasp risks, which stand for different strategies in this tip, that's how you see what happens and you live more of a fulfilling life. And it just kind of ends on being kind to yourself. So a lot of like self-compassion strategies and looking ahead to life with uncertainty.
My name is Arzina Nurani, and this is the book here that I wrote. It's called The 3-Part Beginner's Guide to Manage PCOS Symptoms. And basically this book is, like it says, a beginner's guide to help women who are working through PCOS to kind of starting off on their journey and how they can essentially manage their symptoms associated with it. At the end of each chapter, I've created it in a way that you can really take away what you have learned and apply it to your daily life. So really what I feel makes up PCOS and the way to tackle it, and that has worked for me, is that there are 2 approaches. The first one is your in-your-face symptoms that you kind of need a solution right now, there and then, to resolve it. And then there's the more lifestyle changes that need to be made in order to tackle it really from the root. And so this book goes over those initial symptoms and then gives you ways on which you can change your life so that you can implement those to your daily life and really create a routine for yourself that helps you to manage it. When women look back to the early years of their diagnosis, many do so with some regret and frustration. PCOS can rob you of so much in those first years, and you hardly realize it until you fully understand what is actually taking place in your body. That understanding, for some women, doesn't come for a long time, but when it does, it comes with the power to change the course of their lives. They start to recover their lost spirit, and they discover their zeal for living. They finally, after much struggle, get to an amazing place. My aim in writing this book has been to set you on a journey to getting you there.
Hi, I'm Graham Partridge David. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am the author and illustrator of Max Velocity, a graphic novel for kids about a young autistic superhero and his adventures with his equally superpowered and equally exceptional friends. There were two very specific inspirations. They are my children, and they are both on the autism spectrum, and just like Max Velocity. And through their journey, I've discovered that I also am an autistic person. And my kids are also very, very bright, and we're reading at such a young age that they quickly were reading beyond their age level. And understandably, the stuff that was written for kids at the age level they were reading was more stressful and more intense than they were ready for. And so I discovered that there was room in the world for stories where the characters are safe, but having fun and exciting adventures. And I very much wanted to provide something for that. I just love kids so much, and I'm so grateful to have made something for them that's was made with the intention of respecting them and respecting their intelligence and their search for excitement, but without being scary. That was really important to me. So I'm grateful to have got here.
My name is Terry Shaw, and I have published my first children's book called The Angel, the Lion, and the Secret of the Waves. And I wrote this story many years ago, probably over 20 years ago, when I went on a trip to Santa Monica. And there was a lot of things going on in my life at the time, and I was just sort of in a contemplative headspace. And I remember just walking on the beach and watching the sunset, and just the story kind of evolved from that idea. And I remember the next morning going into the restaurant in the hotel that I was at, and there was an elderly couple sitting there just having their breakfast, and I sat at the table with them, and we just started talking. And I said, oh yeah, and I wrote this story yesterday. In fact, I had written several stories, but this particular one kind of stood out, and I was telling them a little bit about it. And that was the end of it. I didn't do anything with it. It just sat there with all the other stories that I wrote. And over the years, I mean, I've had several children, and I've always told them, it's like, oh yeah, I wrote these kids stories. And eventually I started taking them out and reading a couple of them to the kids. And this particular one about the secret of the waves, it stuck with me. There was something about that story that just I had to do something with it. So there is something unique about the way I wrote the book. And you'll see when you read it, you'll see that there's two characters, the angel and the lion, and you only see the lion once at the beginning of the book, and you see the angel throughout the book, but you never see her face. And there's a reason why I did that. So it's to keep it sort of more open-ended, it leaves room for interpretation, but there's lots of things that appeal to different ages throughout the story, and keeping it open-ended like that, I think it's a really good, for me, I thought it was a really good idea.
All right, everyone. I'm Colleen Van Niekerk. I'm a writer who lives proudly in Port Moody, the city of the arts. I'm a debut author. I'm a novelist. And the first book that's out there in the world of mine is this one, A Conspiracy of Mothers, which is proudly in the White Pines collection. I'm working on the second one. It isn't ready for prime time yet, but it is in progress. I like writing in multiple points of view, and this one is an example of that. The protagonist in this book is called Yolanda, and the short passage that I'm going to read, which is close to the beginning, is in her point of view. The yearning to be mothered filled Yolanda with mourning. Death must have brushed her parents in the long years she'd been away, but the prospect had always been abstract and weightless. Now Yolanda feared that it was coming for Rachel. When she'd burned through the cigarette, she lit another before taking off her underwear. She touched her left hip, where an ornate Celtic tattoo painted the letter I in a tangled vine of rich color that extended across her abdomen. That particular tattoo hid her stretch marks and marked her as belonging to the one person she'd long accepted would never know her. After removing old silver jewelry from her wrists, nose, neck, and ears, she sank into the bath with an exhale. Behind her shut eyes, the Cape pushed forward, frigid ocean and hot sun, the evening cool of the Atlantic. People chuckling. You can't get lost in Cape Town, hey? The mountain is on one side, the ocean on the other. Oh, but you can, she whispered to herself. You can. Her mother's house resurfaced, that refuge before the fall, back when she'd been a fearless girl who painted and didn't give a damn what they said colored girls couldn't do. Black women's bodies bear the history of the world, went the caption on a piece she'd created when she was 17, before Stefan. She'd been proud, thought her art a provocative act of bravery in a time of war.
My name is Gisela Waldenga, and I have been writing, to tell you the truth, from the day I learned how to read. When I had my first reader in grade 1, I thought, I can write those stories. And my father said, you have a lot of imagination. Most of the people know that symphony conductor just keeps time. Well, that's not all he's doing. First of all, he has to know every single note of every single instrument. Then he has to know every little bit that every instrument can do, how it should sound, how to organize. He has his fingers in everything. And so basically and they have a life, actually. They have a life of a family. And they also have problems, like every human being has. And the problems in my books are that he is a very law-abiding citizen. If something happens, he reports it. And unfortunately, when he reports it, he gets into trouble. And the people that he reports on don't like it and go after him and his family. Crash, thump, an angry outcry. Daniel jumped up from his desk. His mind had been far away. He pushed a chair back. Julian again. So impatient. Daniel opened the door to the music room. His son sat dejected on the piano bench. What's happening, Julian? I'll never learn this. Never. The boy hissed through his teeth. Daniel picked up the music book from the floor. It's not the book's fault. Don't smash it around. He sat down beside the boy. What part can't you get? Julian shook his head. I don't want to see it. Okay, take a break. Julian looked at his father hopefully. For the rest of the day? Daniel got up and sighed. If that's what you need, all right. But, he pointed a finger at him, only if I see your essay for tomorrow finished and done well. Julian slipped off the piano bench. I promise. He looked up at Daniel again. I want Mama to help me. Don't we all? Daniel thought. I know, buddy. I do, and Mia does too. But Mama is somewhere else now. We have to try and work through it. He put his arm around Julian's skinny shoulders. He needs to eat more. Talk to Mama tonight. Julian nodded and climbed up the stairs to his room.